I figured it would be fun to go over some of the changes I'd like to see going into the Elder Scrolls 6 after putting just over 7,000 hours into Skyrim, most of that being vanilla Skyrim. I think it's safe to say that I'm a very big fan of this game. Skyrim is my favorite game of all time, but that's not to say that it's perfect. I have a lot of complaints, there's a lot of things I would change, but I do adore this game and I really want to see the next game be the best game it can be. For starters, instruments should be playable. Whether or not that means that Bard is a playable build, or you can just play it for fun, in the same way you sit at chairs or benches, maybe for the odd coin here or there from random NPCs. It just feels insane to me that we can't just have designated locations to play instruments, in the exact same way they added fishing in Anniversary Edition, right? Just set down a lute in the corner of an inn and just let us get our character to stand up and play it after completing the Bard's College or something like that. In the next game, dual-wielding two-handed weapons should be an endgame perk. Even if they have the exact same attack animation where they just both swing at the exact same time, just make it so both weapons deal 40% less damage to make up for the fact that you are swinging two big boys, and I think visually it would be a great payoff to committing to a two-handed build. Maybe we get a split skill tree where you can either go into wielding two-handed weapons like a berserker, or you can double down on your two-handed mastery and make using one two-handed weapon way more efficient. I think it would be a really interesting way of expanding upon two-handed weapons, which is kind of lackluster in Skyrim, unfortunately. Double shield needs to be a usable build in the Elder Scrolls 6. I've said it to my community already, but if Double Shield is usable in the next game, then it will be the first build that I go for. Shield Bash spam with Taj of the Blooded is super fun in Skyrim, so I would love to see it expanded upon in the next game. Special mention to a finishing blow where you just sandwich some dude's head between both shields, just crack, you know what I mean? I want the Oblivion spellcrafting to come back in Skyrim. Skyrim's enchanting focus on cost reduction needs to go away so the system can come back. It needs to go away because otherwise people will just make god tier OP spells that cost insane amounts of magicka, but cast them for free. It adds a lot of fun and creativity to mage classes, which really suffered in Skyrim compared to warrior and sneak builds. I mean, destruction was terrible. Easily the worst pure build in the game until Anniversary Edition added the elemental spells, which a spellcrafting system could have done from day one. This is probably my most controversial take, but I want the difficulty settings in the next game to be removed entirely. I have two other videos going over how difficulty in Skyrim works and why I think the difficulty system is flawed and pointless. Basically, I think the entire game should be balanced around one difficulty and double down on level scaling the world instead of a simple damage multiplier. I think this will make the game's balance a lot easier, and as we already know, Bethesda struggles enough when it comes to balance in their games. With level scaling, the player can't really over-level any areas, so no matter where a player is, what quests they're doing, the content is pretty much always relative to their strength. Plus, level ranges are already controlling the really interesting aspects of the game, such as enemy spawns and world spawns, so it makes sense to me to just double down on that. I want to see passive magic effects that can be activated or deactivated whenever the player wants. This is a really small thing, but for warrior and sneak styled characters, I think it would be really fun to be able to activate a passive spell that gives you 20% damage reduction while it's active, or maybe makes it so you're 35% harder to detect while sneaking, or something at the cost of permanently reducing your magicka bar by like 40% or something like that. This way, classes can still utilize their magicka bar in a meaningful way without having to really worry about actually using spells. This would be so useful for two-handed users in Skyrim specifically. Starfs need to be overhauled greatly in the next game. Instead of just being some mindless stick that throws a spell out for free, I would like to see Starfs passively increase cost reduction of a certain school when wielded, as well as costing magicka to cast the spells attributed to them at a greatly reduced rate, instead of needing soul gems to fill them up. This way, they will always be useful throughout the entire game without needing external resources, like the soul gems, while also rewarding endgame level characters who are strong enough to cast spells without needing the Starfs, with the player fantasy of being so powerful that they don't need them. I never want to see Magic rely on cost reduction ever again. In Skyrim, whereas one-handed, two-handed, and archery all buff extra damage from enchanting, the schools of magic all get a cost reduction decrease, which completely throws the balancing from magic out of the goddamn window. Not only does this mean that your spell's damage and effects fall off heavily into endgame compared to other builds, but it also makes magicka completely pointless, since all of your spells are free. If you're building a mage in Skyrim properly, you should only have 100 magicka, and put all your points into health and stamina for survivability. Just like a warrior. Or any thief build. It feels really weird to have, you know, the entire magicka aspect of a mage be pointless in an RPG. Unless, of course, you're talking about the Conjure Undying Ghost spell added in Anniversary Edition, because when you summon him, he uses up all of your magicka and he gets extra stats depending on how much magicka you used, up until 300 times 2, so he gets 600 all stats. But that's just one example. Also, can we talk about how they thought ahead enough to put a cap on magic damage reduction for the player at 85%, but there is no cap for cost reduction? Honestly, a really weird choice. We need less essential characters. We seriously need to find alternative ways to complete random side quests other than just making characters essential until they're one random quest to find some random iron sword with some random enchantment and some random bandit den is done. Different methods for getting information on certain quests could be as simple as check dead character's house for information, and then spawning a note in a drawer next to their bed the same way Kodlak's journal spawns in after his funeral. The player should be punished for massacring towns or cities with more than just a little bit of jail time. Make us put in a little bit of extra work for our savagery. Just outright failing certain optional side quests is fine as far as I'm concerned. I want the characters in the world to feel like they're more than just cattle for me to extract and harvest missions from. As the hero of the world, I should want to keep people alive, and I wish killing named characters or letting them die had more consequences. And finally, not being the leader of every single guild and faction in the game. I stand by this, and I rant about it to my chat on Twitch all the time. I loathe how everyone in this game just goes, "Oh man, that was wild! Anyway, you're the leader now!" 15 minutes after joining any group and something happens. The only faction in Skyrim we should be leading by the end of the game is the Dark Brotherhood, and that is because we are the ones who's in contact with the Night Mother, and everyone else is already dead. Vilkas was pretty much made to be the leader of the Companions. He's been there since he was a child. He's talking to Kodlak as soon as we get there, and he's basically already second in command. All we did was kill some werewolf hunters and a hagraven. The College of Winterhold. They taught us how to cast a ward, then made us the archmage of the entire college? We just joined the damn college to learn. Mirabelle should have lived after being injured and become the new leader. What the hell do we know about teaching people magic? Yesterday we got caught trying to cross the border and were about to be executed because the only spells we knew how to defend ourselves with was flames and healing. And then the Thieves Guild? If Brynjolf doesn't want it, that's fine. There are a bunch of other veteran members of the guild who can lead in his place. Delvin Mallory is the perfect pick. Dude's already got connections with everyone and is one of the most influential members of the group. It's insane to me that we are the leader of any of these groups instead of just being given a pat on the back for a good day's work in a high-ranking position. The second we become leader, we just go, well that was cool, and then walk out the front door and never come back again. Like, maybe someone else who cares more about these factions should be looking after them instead. Thank you for watching though. If you have any ideas for other things you would like to see in the Elder Scrolls 6, put them in the comments below. And I might make a follow-up video depending on how well this does. And by that, I mean I demand at least 4 likes on this video before I even think about doing another one.